Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy.
Wouldn't know what to do without it.
And David Park.
Is it even a Team House episode? We don't know. Hey folks, welcome to episode 195 of The Team House. I'm Jack Murphy, here with David Park. Hopefully all of our internet issues are now sorted. Hello, Verizon. Bye, Spectrum. It was nice for a while, for a time. So hopefully we're back in business here. Our guest on the show tonight is Dave Madden. Dave served as an officer in SEAL Team 2 and then in the team's intelligence fusion cell and has a lot of other interesting experiences and life in general. So we're really excited to have him on the show tonight. Really appreciate you taking time out of your Friday evening, Dave.
Oh, it's good to have a drink with the boys, right?
Absolutely, man. What are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking Guinness tonight. It's not my default go-to, but it's cold out, and that's what I had.
Okay.
What's your default go-to?
Oh, I've gotten really into really good cider, which is like most people who drink cider or think about hard cider, they haven't had the real stuff. The real stuff is it's herbal and dry, and there's this company called Posterity Cider Works, makes the best cider I've ever had in my entire life, and they do it in this way that also restores the community around them. They'll go to old homesteads, 100-year-old homesteads, and they'll find these 100-year-old apple trees just covered in blackberry vines, completely neglected, somebody's inheritance that they didn't know they had. They'll go in, they'll clear it out, pull the apples down, make the cider, sell it, but also deliver back a couple of bottles, and all of a sudden those people will be like, wait a second, this came from Grandpa's orchard. We should take care of we should take care of it. And then they do. And so you have all these people kind of reclaiming their inheritance.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. And that's why I tried it at first. I was like, chances of this being good, I don't have any idea.
Cool. Yeah.
But I love what they're doing. They're restoring their entire community by making something. Then I tried it. It also happens to be the best cider I've ever had. So that's my guilty pleasure.
Cool. I'll take a look for it.
Yeah.
So the cider has grown on me a little bit in time, but I haven't tried that one. We're drinking Lagavulin tonight. This is the Offerman edition. Charred oak cask. Yeah. It's good.
The man's drink.
Yes, right.
Indeed.
Plus, you're mixing it with the cigars, which I've noticed are perhaps your guilty pleasure, Jack.
Yeah, they are. This is Las Cavaleras 2022. This is actually the first time I've had these. They're very good.
I can't do cigars. I can't do them. I'm just not. I think I'm just not masculine enough.
You're not a tobacco guy, I don't think.
No.
Well, you're a college grad, so you probably smoke pipes.
Well, he's in Oregon, but so he's smoking something out of a pipe.
Right.
That's true. The nearest business to me is a dispensary. That is true.
So, Dave, let's jump right into it, man. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how you grew up, and sort of what your path was that kind of eventually took you towards the Navy.
Yeah. So, my dad was in the Navy actually, but he was a dentist. So that doesn't really count. Sorry, Dad. And so we traveled around a bunch, and I had a lot of I was in the Philippines when Mount Pinatubo erupted and got evacuated on the USS Peleliu, and so but it was pretty comfortable upbringing. My dad was a dentist, so my parents both had Volvos. We lived on a cul-de-sac. I went to a nice high school, and the thing, there was literally nothing in my past that would suggest that I was going to go be a team guy. Then in college, a buddy and I we started a software company, a legal tech company in 2006, and it started to do okay. We started to get customers. The State Farm Insurance Company was using it. And I was, instead of being excited that, hey, this thing we built is doing well, I froze. I was terrified. I was like, wait a second, I am not ready to spend the rest of my life in front of a computer. I had to do something. I can read, write, talk, and write code, and these are literally my only skills. I can't, I can't put gas in a car or pump a tire. I've never shot a gun. I've never jumped. I don't know any of these things. And so I just started looking for the hardest thing I could possibly find. And I saw the attrition rate at SEAL training. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Also, it tests all these things I'm really terrible at. I was 160 pounds, nerd, I couldn't even talk to girls, man. I was definitely not the person that anybody thought was going to be a team guy. In fact, most of my friends in college made fun of me. They're like, no way. I had like one friend who's like, yeah, you'll crush it, dude. No worries. And so we kind of crash landed that startup, and I spent the next year. I worked at the Genius Bar at Apple, which is actually where I learned most of my people skills. While I was training to go to Buds, joined with 330 of my closest friends, and we ended with 17 originals. And the rest of the time, I spent the next decade in the SEAL teams. I was going to stay in until it wasn't fun anymore. And so, yeah, that's my military career.
So
and I got out and did a bunch of startup stuff.
What did your dad think of you, like volunteering for the SEALs after your, high school and college years and whatnot?
Yeah, they were terrified. Both my parents were terrified, and my dad. I wanted to enlist originally, so I went into OCS and Buds as an officer, largely because of the violence of their reaction against the idea that I might enlist. I knew the difference, but I couldn't communicate it to them, and I wasn't enough of an adult at the time to really like make that like hard call myself. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll go in as an officer. It'll be fine. So he was mostly terrified that I was going to go in and enlisted. After that, they didn't really know what to think.
Yeah. Was he worried that like if you didn't make it, that you'd be out in the fleet as a boatswain's mate somewhere, like chipping paint?
Yeah, just some undes like haze gray underway.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
that was definitely a concern.
So you went right into that SEAL pipeline. We can skip past Navy basic training. I'm sure that was very exciting. But as we jump a little further forward into
wait, let's talk. No, I'm just kidding.
The co-ed barracks. We've talked about that on previous episodes.
It wasn't co-ed barracks.
Tell us about you're a self-described nerd hitting the ground in Buds, the ultimate test of alpha males everywhere. I mean, what was that experience like for you, suddenly being in this environment where dudes are screaming at you and spraying you with a fire hose and all that good stuff?
It was both exhilarating and like terrifying. And I admit I made it harder on myself than I needed to, because I was vegetarian at the time. I'm not anymore, but I was vegetarian. So I did Buds vegetarian, actually.
Wow, what?
And that was basically me being a lightning rod. So all of the instructors, when they found out, it was fucking over for me for quite some time. That was dumb of me to even like say anything about it. But no, it was great, actually. It was super fun. And there were points where, breakout on for Hell Week is absolute chaos, but it's so well organized chaos that even while you're in the chaos, you look around and you're like, oh shit, this is a machine. Like, these are fucking professionals. Can we swear on this podcast,
yes,
by the way? It's
absolutely. Yes, we drink, we swear,
good.
We get naked. Everybody wants to see your shorts. Or not.
Yeah, they want to see my. I heard there were a lot of dudes asking me to take my shirt off. I feel good about that. Like, I have options. It's probably not going to happen. It's a little bit cold. But Buds was actually like super fun. For the most part, even the pain parts were like. You said let's skip ahead. Let's get past the the basic Navy training. There was a time when we were getting such a bad beatdown in Buds where they stopped up the sinks in the classroom and they made us push all the desks and chairs to the side, flooded the classroom. We're getting beat for like 2 hours here, back to the beach and whatnot. So it's this like sandy slurry. Dudes are pissing in it. Like, it smells. It's the worst thing you could possibly imagine. Like, it is the most violent beat down. Like, I still have scars on my hands from this beating. And I turned to my buddy who was in OCS with me, and we're like, dude, at least we're not folding our underwear into 6-inch squares. Like, and we both just started laughing, and just in the middle of the complete chaos, there's like dudes crying, crying in like the fetal position, like getting just the shit kicked out of them by the instructors. And I was like, this is actually pretty awesome. Like, when do you experience this sort of chaos?
Yeah, out of curiosity, because you recognize the order behind the chaos. Do you think that going into it as a nerd, sort of as a programmer, as a very analytical and tech savvy person, that you saw the patterns and that you sort of had a different perspective that others might not? So
I think I definitely had a different perspective than a lot of my classmates who were, there was a lot of guys that were just out of high school or out of high school in like a year. And I had a different perspective than they did. And I don't think it was because of any analytical skills or any like specific background. I think it was just like the difference between an 18-year-old and a 23-year-old is pretty substantial. I'd been to college. I'd been on my own. I'd had multiple jobs. I'd been in the world a little bit. And so I had like some context, whereas I think it would be a lot more terrifying coming straight from high school where you're like coddled into this.
Right. Makes sense.
And you were going through one of the other things we skipped over is you went through OCS, so you were going through as an officer.
Yeah, which is another way to get a lot of extra instructor attention.
Vegetarian
with good cause,
officer.
With good cause.
Now,
Yeah,
did you?
it was bad.
In addition to being the vegetarian, were you like wearing Birkenstocks and wearing hemp shirts and stuff like that?
No, I didn't have any style back then.
No, nice.
Well, actually, a serious question though. Going through that experience as a vegetarian, I mean, was there like a performance issue as far as like what you? I mean, the like stereotypes about being a vegan or vegetarian is you're like low energy. You can't build muscle tone. I mean, some of this is maybe not really true, but I'd like to hear your perspective.
I think that you can loop one. I actually don't think a vegetarian diet is the best diet for like at maximum human performance. So I definitely put myself at a disadvantage doing that. But at the same time, I'm fairly certain it was Bill Russell who, like, legendary NBA player I think he was actually vegan. Carl Lewis was vegetarian. So like there's like high performing vegetarians for sure. You just have to be careful about you're getting your macros and all that. You have to be careful you're getting the right amount of protein in your amino acids and all that. But if you're careful, it's obviously doable. I did it.
Right.
However, I think if I did it again and I didn't do it that way, I think I would have had an easier time.
Mm-hmm.
And I physically was one of the faster runners. I was one of the fastest runners, always in like the top 5 running, top 3 swimming. I did well in all those things, but the things that crushed me were the things that required strength, like log PT and whatnot. I still did okay, but like I carried my weight, but they were bad, and they probably didn't need to be as bad as they were.
Now, were you? I mean, I know that one of the things about buds is guys tend to gain a lot of weight, like a lot of muscle weight during buds, because aren't you guys eating like 4 times a day?
Yeah. So I think you have like a body composition change, but you don't gain a lot of weight.
Okay.
So I started at 165, and my body composition changed because I ran track in college. So I was all quads, hams, and ass. That was like my entire body. And so I definitely redistributed weight to be more balanced. But it's the big, like massive, like muscle gain for most team guys is like during SQT and after. Because buds, you're burning so much. You're basically eating 4 pizzas a day and 2 big breakfast burritos and 4 milkshakes just because you're shivering the entire time.
Right. Yeah. What was that like for you? Because water is sort of the great divider, right? I mean, water will take it out of you like nothing else will.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you were a track runner. Were you also a swimmer?
I was a really strong swimmer. I wasn't a competitive swimmer since like grade school, but like when I grew up on all these Navy bases, the only thing to do, like my dad was stationed in 29 Palms. So like a Marine Corps base in the middle of nowhere. What's there to do there? Well, you can either get in trouble or you can go to the pool. And my mom was a swimmer, so we just spent all day at the pool, and we'd wrestle with the Marine like lifeguards. So I was used from like the age of like 7 to like almost drowning on the back of a 6'7" Lance Corporal at the bottom of the pool who was wrestling with me, right? So like the water was never a problem for me. The temperature, I mean, it was cold as fuck, but like I did okay. There were guys that did worse. I had one dude in my class, Izzy. He's brilliant guy and like really, really tough, but he has no body fat because he's like, when he takes his shirt off, it looks like a Batman suit. He's just ripped, and so he had no body fat whatsoever, and so he would just hype out just constantly.
Yeah,
and so like they would pull us out because Izzy was hyping out.
It's a good way to get over.
Yeah. So you go through that experience and then move on to SQT. And by the way, what year is this?
Oh, shoot. Let's see. OCS was 2008, so this is 2009.
Okay. And then...
Yeah, it's class...
Go ahead.
I was going to say class 277 in buds.
And then what was it like for you starting like your dive training and small unit tactics and all that good stuff?
Oh, dude, it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was just exhilarating because I'd never done anything like any of these things before. And, like combat diving is miserable. 4 hours on bag, like you're just like the highlight of your 4 hours, other than the actual tactical thing, is that time you have to pee and you get warm for about 10 seconds. And then like you're back to just the cold monotony of just like putting out and hoping that you hit the ship. But man, like if you go on bag for 4 hours and you come up and hit your target ship, there are very few things that have been like more gratifying than that. It is absolutely physically miserable, but it's also really fun. And then small unit tactics, I mean, it's paintball, it's fun. And then you get to do some crazy stuff like try to trick the instructors and beat them at their own game, which is always the best part.
How'd you do that?
The best example was actually not in SQT. It was we did this combat tracking course in Fort Huachuca, like right on the Arizona-Mexico border. And our FTX was, we had to carry this like 200-pound dummy, like it was something like five or 10 clicks or something. It was a long way, and we're like, oh, that's gonna suck, but we can do it. And we were supposed to cover our tracks on the way so that the instructors couldn't track us. It was like the anti-tracking part. Well, we realized that was gonna suck a lot, and we might have a better way around it. So we took two of us, carried the dummy, did a J-hook around a piece of terrain. The other guys laid down like a really, really heavy track, so the instructors would just get pulled that direction. We basically doubled back and stole their truck from the start point, and then drove to the end. And they were so pissed. They were livid. Like I've never seen an instructor so mad. And then they're like, "What made you think you could do that?" And we're like, "Look at the rules." And they looked at the rules and like, damn it. So the next guys that went, there was a rule like no stealing instructor vehicles. But we stole a pickup truck to carry a dummy 5 miles instead of us having to do it. So that was, that sort of stuff is always super fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then finally, by the end of all this fun and misery scattered throughout, you get your Trident. Or do they do a probation period on the teams?
No, they don't anymore. They give you your Trident at your SQT graduation, and you go to the team, and then if your chief is old school, they'll take your Trident symbolically and put it in the bird cage until you've earned it. My chief did that. My first chief was awesome. He didn't end up deploying with us for political reasons. But at first, yeah, SEAL Team 2 when I was there was extremely political and not a particularly great place to be. But
when you say political, like you mean like internal infighting kind of thing? I
mean internal politics.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so we did a probationary period, but not really. You get your Trident.
Did you get it pinned?
Yeah. You get your Trident pinned on you at your SQT graduation.
I mean like pinned.
Blood, no, all the way in, no. Now, do you guys do that?
There are rumors.
You guys get tabbed in?
There are rumors that still exists.
Some might say.
We'll see. I definitely knew that it happened, and it was a voluntary thing.
Gotcha.
Maybe at McPee's afterwards, once you're allowed to go there for the first time.
And while all of this all this mayhem is going on, you got married during SQT.
Yeah. My wife and I had been together for, my girlfriend at the time had been together for a long time. And so we were, I don't even know why we waited as long as we did. I think we were just, I know exactly why. Because she was in chiropractor school when I started Buds. And she was in San Jose. And when I finished Hell Week, she realized, okay, like this is kind of a thing. Like we're either going to go in different directions or she was going to come down. And we had a phone conversation about it, and then she stopped going to chiropractor school and came down about like 2 weeks after Hell Week, once it was like statistically likely that I was going to make it. So that's like when I knew like, okay, we both kind of made a choice to like do this thing together. And then it was just a matter of like, we got married before I went to SEAL Team 2. so that the Navy would pay to have her stuff moved. Like our timing was directly dictated by like dependent benefits.
Dave, you want to shout out to our sponsor for this show?
For sure. Our sponsor for this show is Silent SLNT Faraday bags. They have bags, sleeves, wallets, cases. They're all exquisitely designed to ensure your devices become invisible, untrackable, and silent. Instantly block cell, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS tracking, RFID, SAT, EMP, and EMF radiation. Use code TEAMHOUSE for 10% off, or use the link in the description. That's TEAMHOUSE for 10% off. And look, guys, like if you're traveling, if you're going places, and you're not using your phone or not using your laptop, having a Faraday bag is a good thing. You don't have to be planning a major crime. You don't have to be hiding from a government organization. Like, it's good, sensible. It's just really good, sensible stuff. And not just your phones, but your wallets too.
Your laptop.
Your laptop. You know, anything that has RFID, Bluetooth, wireless connections.
Tablets.
Keep it safe. Put it in a Faraday bag when you're traveling. When you don't need it. Protect yourself.
All right, back to you, Dave.
I like how their URL has all the vowels are silent.
Yep.
I was like, what's going on there? Oh, silent vowels. Smart.
Got it.
Smart.
So you get married, you get your Trident. What's it like showing up at SEAL Team 2, taking a platoon as a brand new officer?
Yeah, well, I showed up with a completely messed up uniform. Like my ribbons were on the wrong spot. Since we never wore a dress uniform in Buzz, we were just in camis. I didn't know any of this stuff. And so I showed up, and the first guy that I met was a guy named Adam Shapiro, who's still in crushing it. Great dude. But he pulled me aside. He's like, "Look, dude, you are all kinds of fucked up." And so like this was I walked into the SEAL team building, and this is the first words that somebody said to me is, "You're all kinds of." I'm like, "Oh, this is off to a great start. I'm gonna do great here." So I had to fix all my uniform stuff, and then my first platoon was like really chaotic. The chief and the OIC that I started off working for, neither one of them ended up deploying, and so like we had a whole head shed replacement halfway through the workup. So that was definitely it was chaotic, but you make do.
What is the officer's relationship to their team? As a new officer and even moving on. And did anybody like in BUDS or any time thereafter like pull you aside and explain to you like this isn't the line Navy?
Yeah, so it was pretty clear in BUDS that it wasn't a line Navy, and so things like fraternizing are very differently defined in the fleet and in an SW. Like you can have drinks with the boys after work, like that is okay. During training, they actually did a really great thing that they're still doing. It was probably the best leadership training that I saw in an SW. It's a thing called JOTC, Junior Officer Training Course, and for us, it was between BUDS and SQT. And so you would go through BUDS with your classmates, and they would see you at your worst, like you're like the absolute bottom. And so what they do, they take the officers out, put them in a different class, put them in this JOTC course while your enlisted guys go ahead. So you do this training course, and then the next batch of enlisted guys would come in and you would do SQT with them, so that you got to renew a relationship. So like JOTC talked a lot about the responsibilities of good officers. There was a senior E6 that was there, and a senior 03. So both with recent combat experience. Basically, this is how you can survive, thrive, do well as a junior officer when you roll into your first platoon. So they actually did a really good job of that. And, a lot of that was like, know your boys' limitations, but don't let them know they have any. And a lot of it is like learn to trust and lean on your chief.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So they set you up for success before you get there.
They did. They did a really good job of that. I was like, again, that entire first training pipeline was really impressive. How professional it was. Actually, I was expecting it to be just mayhem, and it was mayhem, but professional mayhem.
Right. Controlled mayhem.
And
Exactly.
so, can you tell us a little bit about like what was your platoon like? What was it like when you got to meet these guys, whether on the job training with them or going out having a beer with them? Who were these dudes?
Yeah. So it was. I think every platoon and every team is probably very similar in that there are some guys who, if they weren't there, they'd be getting their MBA or like running for Congress, and maybe they do that later. And then there's some guys who are like break glass in case of war. Like if they weren't a team guy, they'd be in prison. Mm-hmm. And so there's definitely a mix of those. And coming as a junior officer, you're the bottom of the bottom. Like people understand that you're necessary, but especially on the East Coast, there's like this really big difference I've noticed between East Coast and West Coast. So I did my first platoon at 2 East Coast, and I did the rest of my career at the West Coast. And there's this huge difference, and I think it has to do with proximity to development group, because at dev group, officers are not well respected in the like broader culture. They're a necessary evil, but just barely because of the Navy makes us do it or something like that. And so that was sort of the culture that I rolled into at 2. It was an offshoot of that, and so it was hard finding a place to like. To put your feet, basically, to get your feet underneath you. And I don't think I did a really good job of it either. There's definitely things I look back and I'm like, man, if I'd only been just a little more mature, I would have handled that particular situation a lot better.
Yeah. I mean, especially now you're dealing with SEALs who at this time, some of them have quite a bit of combat experience, right? And here you are, a fresh-faced, young officer who's in charge of them.
Right. So the two caveats there, I would say, is that the guys in my platoon with combat experience were by far the most welcoming of everybody. Really? It was the guys who had gone to Europe and like trained the Latvian SOF on their first pump, and this is their second. Those were the ones that like really wanted to put the hammer down, and you could see that immediately. And I think that that's a pattern that we see a lot. It's just in everyday life, right? But the I forgot what was the other thing I was going to say. But no, so like there was that. Oh yeah, also I wasn't in charge of the entire platoon. There's an OIC when you roll in as for your first platoon as an officer, it's an assistant officer in charge.
Okay.
So in the platoon there were 2 to 3 AOICs, usually 2, one for each fire team basically, and then an officer in charge who has at least done 1 deployment.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so I mean that's pretty leadership heavy because the SEAL platoon is like 16 to 18 guys.
Exactly, something like that. It is, except that the AOIC role is, especially again, this is like really talking to my West Coast peers. It's very different on the East and West Coast. The tactical role of the AOIC at ours. At SEAL Team 2 when I was there, it was very learn, heavy on learning and less on much leadership. You're not making any tactical calls. It's where you're not supposed to make any tactical calls. I ended up doing that, but that was because the E6s sometimes had challenges making calls when there were bolts flying.
Well, let's start to get into that about, when you find out that you have this deployment coming up, you guys call it a workup, like your pre-mission training. Can you take us through some of that? The way it goes is you don't quite know what your deployment's going to be right away. So you start doing your generic workup, and then it starts to get more and more specific as you get closer and closer. So when I got to SEAL Team 2, we had no idea we were going to Afghanistan. We could have been going to the Philippines and doing JSETs. So I was really actually you don't join the SEAL teams. You don't join the Green Berets to go train other people who go to war. You join because largely you want to see what you have in you. Mm-hmm. And so when I found out that we were going to Afghanistan, I was psyched because I was going to get to find out. And that's like one of my big motivations is I wanted to find out what I was made of.
And your wife was also excited about you going to Afghanistan?
No, she was not excited, but she actually did like an incredibly like not shockingly, but just like in general, like she did a really, really good job of compartmentalizing. I didn't really feel like she was super stressed about it, and I don't think she let herself feel the stress until I came back. But she knew that this is what's happening, and so like why fight it, right?
It's amazing. So what happened when you found out that you were going to Afghanistan? Like what kind of train up were you guys doing and whatnot?
So we have there's a 6-month ULT period that is basically uniform across every platoon, and then after that you have some time to build up specific skills for where you're going. So we did high angle shooting and pack mule stuff in Montana. It's just really great training, and then we did some things in New Mexico for like more Afghan specific things where they had like a mountain town set up that looked like an Afghan village and role players and all that. So we were reasonably well prepared for those sorts of things. But the other thing, I guess I should have led with this, is that the mission we were going on was VSO stuff. So village stability operations, coin stuff, Green Beret work, like really, really interesting, but not the sort of thing that most of the guys in my platoon signed up for. They signed up to kick doors and do frogman stuff. And so there's this cultural kind of backlash against what we were going to be doing. And that showed up. I mean, that definitely showed up overseas when when we got there without supervision. Like guys are going to end up doing the things they want or focus on the things they want. They'll will those things into existence, and it may not be the best thing for that specific mission, right? So like frogmen want to break stuff, they want to shoot, they want to kick indoors and all of that. And so VSO, which we did some VSO training, there was not a lot of people weren't really that into it. We'll put it this way. There were a few of us who were like, okay, well, this is the job, let's crush it. And that definitely happened. But there was we had a bit of a dearth of leadership by the time we were getting ready to deploy, because the good chief, the only one with like real legitimate Afghanistan combat experience, had been fired for standing up for the guys too much. It was kind of a dysfunctional situation. So like we had this like, you see the SEAL teams hit the newspapers and you're like, oh, there's some cultural problems there. Like I definitely experienced some of those in my first platoon for sure, where like we have this mission that is valuable and important, and maybe it's not what you signed up for, but guess what? We're supposed to be silent professionals. Let's go get it. And so there was a lot of backlash against that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand too. I mean, I think a lot of the military went through that, right? That you were trained for one thing, and now they're asking you to do something completely different. It's like, oh, what?
Yeah, no, it is absolutely understandable. At the same time,
it is what it is. Yeah,
it is what it is. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to quit? Oh.
So where in Afghanistan were you getting sent? What was your understanding of the mission when you guys deployed?
Yeah, so they gave us a book called, I think it was called The Village, about Marine Corps doing basically the precursor of VSO in Vietnam.
Oh, the CAP guys.
Yeah. It was a great book. And like, so like that was my understanding, as we're going to go and sort of go indige and, try to understand what they were after and try to find a way to take, the ground truth and meld it to the mission goal and find a way to like get to that point. Right. And then, so we went to SODIF. We went to Southeast Afghanistan. We were in Uruzgan. We started off at when we got to the ground in Uruzgan, my platoon went to a place called Kushkadir, which was like a teeny little outpost that was supposed to be tactically or strategically significant because it was going to be next to this big road that never ended up getting built. And so there was literally nothing going on there. Like we took over for an ODA team and they're like, there's nothing here. There's nothing going on. And so the first thing we started doing is like, okay, well, where can we go? Can we Can we move somewhere? And so I took 3 guys down to this place called Chora, which is, as far as I know, it's the homeland of Mullah Omar, kind of one of the places between us in, within a reasonable drive of where we were, that we could maybe go actually do some real work. And so we built a new VSP there. Did that for a couple of months, like while getting rocket attacked and all of that. It was probably the most interesting construction job I've ever worked on. It's like suicide bombers, all those things while we're trying to build a base. And then the platoon came out, and we finished off the deployment there.
So while you were there, I know that like there were guys on the team that didn't want to do that, but how did they adapt while you were there?
It depends on the day. There were the guys that really wanted to smash things, played a lot of video games, and then they also ended up taking one person's word. Let's say they're working some intel. They would take one person's word at perhaps give it more validity than it necessarily deserved, in order to have a target to go check out. And so he was a lot of fishing with dynamite, basically, which actively undid a lot of the work that we had done while there was just 4 of us there building the base. Like we had actually made inroads with the local tribal chiefs, and that sort of got erased pretty quickly once the rest of the platoon showed up, which was crushing, absolutely crushing.
Was that because you were hitting the enemy, or was it because you were hitting dry holes and just pissing off the local population?
Exactly. Just dry hole after dry hole after dry hole. And it didn't always stay that way, but the vast majority of the ticks I've been in have been us getting ambushed by them because somebody was too impatient to just sit. And so, yeah, it was mostly dry holes, just stirring up hornets' nests. And then we would get a 107 rocket over the wall, an hour after we got back to base.
Right.
As a young officer who had, left a startup you left the startup industry, and the wealth therein, because you wanted to, prove yourself and find out what you're made of, and you went to the SEALs. What was it like for you that first tick? And for viewers who don't know, tick is troops in contact. What was it like for you that first tick?
The first
actual tick,
the first actual tick was way more disorienting than I thought it would be, because the thing I wasn't prepared for more than anything was that when somebody's shooting at you, you don't actually know where it's coming from.
Right.
It's not a video game where there's a red directional thing, like somebody over here is shooting at you. It's just some bullets are snapping by you, but you don't know which direction. So you're laying down trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Everybody's having a different reaction. In my first tick, nobody in that fire team had been in combat before. This is all of our first time getting shot at. And the people that were supposed to be making calls were among the most terrified. And, it ended up being a situation where I picked up the squad leader, and they tried to physically move him to get us moving. So it was mostly just really, really disorienting. And then there was definitely a bit of post-tick disillusionment. Wait a second, this is war? What the hell kind of war is this? What the hell was that? Yeah, right. This is not what I was prepared for.
Right.
Yeah. So, and most of the ticks have been because we set up, and then we hear something going on over there, and instead of us staying where we are, somebody would get itchy and be like, "Oh, we gotta go there now," and then we would end up getting caught on the way. So there were a lot of, there were a lot of ticks where it was us getting ambushed. So I've been ambushed far more times than I think anybody should be.
Yeah, and this deployment we were talking a little bit before the show. You said it got extended way longer than a normal special operations deployment would ever be.
Yeah. So Naval Special Warfare and SW, the SEAL teams are really good at some things, but logistics is not one of them. And so what happened was they wanted to get us on the same rotation schedule as the ODAs, as the Army guys that we were like basically trading in and out with at the VSPs, which makes a certain amount of sense, except that they didn't account for the fact that there weren't enough planes to do this. And so it was on a staggered schedule, and then they brought it together, and all of a sudden, like the load on the planes, like there's a massive spike right here, and then it drops off. And so instead of us, so there were like logistical challenges with it, but then there was also the fact that we had to, if you want to bring these back into sync, somebody's got to stay extra long. And that happened to be our deployment, where we went from, a regular soft deployment is 6 months. And we were there for 11 and a half months. Ooh. Not quite a full year, but like you said, makes you, like you said before, makes you really respect the conventional guys that go over there for 12 or 18 months. Guys get wacky after 7, get real wacky after 7. And so like those, all hats off to anybody that stays longer than that.
Yeah. How, did you guys know you were going to be there that long, or were they extending your deployment like month by month?
No, we knew it was going to be about 10 and a half. And then the logistics ended up tacking on like an extra 25 days or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so we knew, we just didn't know. We just didn't really know, we knew here, but not here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing too, I think, is like special ops guys are like wired pretty tight. And I mean, I can't imagine like deploying Rangers for 11 months. Like we would eat each other alive. Not because like we don't like each other, but when you have like really tightly wound young guys who they always have to be close to each other. And they can never kind of, get away from one another and go do their own thing. Like I can see, guys getting loopy.
Yeah. And then you throw into the fact that like it's only dudes for that entire time, because you're walking around at a rural Afghan village and you don't see women. You see guys and you see black niqabs. You don't ever see like a woman. You don't interact with them at all. And so it's 11 months just dudes, just a massive sausage fest.
Yeah. Now, being that you guys were doing VSOs, did they set you up for success? Not just the Navy and not just the SEALs, but the military in general. Did they send you guys like PRT teams and other like support elements to help with that process?
So the only interaction I had with the PRT was because we moved from where we were down south into Trora, and there was an Australian FOB there, FOB Mirweiss. And at that Australian FOB, there was an Army PRT team there. So that was the only reason like we had that connection. It was just a pure geographical luck. I don't think that anybody really understood exactly what we were doing. It was kind of one of those situations where we're given sort of a mission, and not really a reason for it. And just like, okay, now go. Like before, I remember this very clearly. I will never forget this. Before we deployed, it was the wardroom was having a conversation about this. And so all the officers together, and the XO was leading it. And somebody asked, why are we going? Like, what is the reason?
We
want a mission, a reason for the mission. Like it's the question, right? Like, what is the motivation behind all of this? Like, what is our goal? And my XO said something to the effect of, because we're already there, and if we don't keep going, we will lose face.
Yikes!
He
was honest. He was honest, though.
Is that for naval special warfare or the military in general? Was he speaking for?
He was speaking for us, the platoons that were deploying from SEAL team to the war zone. But when you go in, and I actually think that the problems my platoon had in combat, you can trace directly to what the XO said. Like, he wasn't wrong in retrospect, unfortunately. But when you frame it like that, and then you're put into a situation where bullets are crossing over your head and you have no idea what's going on, and your reason for being there is to save face, whatever the fuck that means.
Right.
It robs you of courage. It
Right.
robs you of purpose.
What-
And I think that was part of the problem.
What was one for people who might not know? We've talked about this on the show before, but can you tell us what village stability operations are, and can you tell us like what you guys were outside the general definition, what you guys were supposed to do?
Yeah. So village stability operations is basically, as far as I understand it, and there are people out there who understand this a lot better than I do, it's going into a place that is unstable, is unfriendly, hostile area, and winning over the locals. It's a part of the coin strategy. It's one of David Petraeus's genius things that at the time was considered the gospel. This is how you do it. And the idea was we go into a place that doesn't want us to be there, show them that we're cool, and that we're actually there to help. And then somehow they think that the national government, which they don't recognize really as anything other than corrupt, is good. And what that turned into was us doing presence patrols and having like shuras, meetings with tribal elders and like the district governor and that sort of thing to try to talk about stuff. But I say it glibly because that's basically the only goal. Like, it didn't get any more specific than that. It didn't get more strategic than that. It was being put into a situation where there's really no winning. I don't know what win criteria there looks like, other than like all of a sudden the Afghans giving up self-respect, which they will not do.
Right.
Because they are some hard people. And I respect the crap out of them, actually. Like, some of the best people I worked with while I was in Afghanistan were Afghanis. And that's like that's no bullshit. That's very true. So we basically were like, choose your own adventure, choose your own mission. And when you combine that with the 11-month deployment and the purposelessness, and then the guys that really wanted to be direct, wanted to be kicking indoors, like, you can see these things sort of like mixed together. The incentive structure, like, you're set up for failure, basically.
Right. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, the war was kind of set up that way, right? Like, there weren't metrics for victory. Like, a VSO would be great if there was any metric to measure how much success.
There has to be, like, we want, there's an overall campaign plan for 10 years. We want Dave's platoon to accomplish this little chunk of it and then hand it off to the next platoon that does their little piece. And if that isn't there, then you're out flapping.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that come to mind there. One is like the handover. Every platoon was very different. The people that you would turn over with would be like, oh, forget all the stuff you've been doing. We're doing this thing instead, because they'd have different ideas. And so like there was no progress. It was just a churn, just a churn. And then, like, Dave, you brought up metrics. Well, I'm sure you've seen this too. Like, the metrics that move up the chain, like, the math doesn't add up ever. Ever. So I spent the last 2 months of my Afghanistan deployment at Siege of Sodif, like, working in the JOC. It was a great place to have like a nervous meltdown, which is basically what happened. I crashed hard. But while I was there, it was like there was like an army major came in to like be he was a reservist. He was on staff there, and his entire job was to measure the like number of Afghans that signed up for ALP and then brief the colonel every day on that. That was his job. He was there for a month and a half, and when he left, he got a fucking Bronze Star.
Right.
But also the numbers that he was reporting, like, none of those were real. And then they'd get inflated there, and they get inflated there, and they get inflated there. And like, when people ask me, and I don't have any deep like on the ground knowledge about this, but when they ask me about like, hey, how did our withdrawal from Afghanistan make you feel? Like, why did that happen? What do you think? I'm like, well, I don't know all of the things about it, but I do know that I wouldn't necessarily blame the people at the very top because they were getting some garbage fiction information.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
they were probably told that everything was fucking perfect. And it's because the incentive structure's in place, right? Like the
Right.
incentive is to deliver good news.
Right.
I think there's this bizarre situation where there were a lot of people, including very smart people who I respect, who thought the Afghan government was going to hold out a lot longer. But as I said at the time, I was like, man, you could have talked to any private who was deployed over there, and they could have told you exactly how this would have went down. I mean, why are you surprised, but not them? You know, something is really, really wrong here.
Yeah, dude. That is almost exactly what like. My short answer is like, were you surprised? I'm like, no. Anybody who has who still has Afghan dust on on a pair of their boots, like not a single one of those people is surprised at what happened.
Yeah.
And so as time went on this deployment, well, you mentioned a little bit about the guys getting loopy and stuff, and I'm not going to jump right to Apocalypse Now analogies, but I mean, what was the effect like on your platoon and on your boys as time went on?
Yeah, so there were a couple of scenarios where I sort of, being a young officer, like I lost the popularity contest. And that was the only thing that a JO had to stand on without the like express endorsement of the OIC. And so I sort of, it did become a little Heart of Darknessy, in that all of these things were sort of spiraling out of control, and there's nothing that I could do. And I still blame myself for that, but I also recognize like I there's nothing I could do. But I'm not going to go into like crazy detail, but the local pharmacy was definitely visited quite a bit. There was a lot of alcohol. I don't even know where it came from. And mostly it was like those things mixed with boredom that led us on some completely made up, like there were completely made up like storylines in like what's going on in the valley. And I had no idea where it was coming from. I was also the only person in my platoon that learned how to speak the language. Like by the time I left there, the Pashto was okay, but my Dari was actually like quite legit. Like I could act as a terp in a pinch.
Wow.
With our CMRG, just because I spent a lot of time with them. I spent a ton of time with them. I ate dinner with our partner force like every night. I got to know them. I got to know about their families, and that was like one of the most rewarding parts. And if I could go back and do it again, one of the things I would do is I would learn more from them.
Yeah,
I would spend more time. There and like invest more. But so like I had more of an ear to ground than anybody else, just because I could because I was the only one who had ears that were actually listening. And some of these storylines that our human guys were coming up with, I don't think they were real, and I don't think that they recognized that they weren't real. I think they were just really bored and looking for a story. Like humans
looking for a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the clouds, and you can pick out a dozen different animals, right? You can see Mona Lisa in a cinnamon roll, and so they were seeing Mona Lisa in a cinnamon roll, except for that it was bad guys. It was that the real bad Talibs are over here, and there were some like low level combatants in our area, definitely for sure. But like Mullah Omar wasn't there. We weren't getting any HVIs.
Right.
Where we were sitting.
There's been a lot of talk about culture problems in the SEALs, and that there might be some influence there, but also it's also, I think, important to respect the fact that what you've got on the ground there are pipe hitters, right? Yeah. Dudes who have gone through some of the
wrong place.
Yeah, they've gone through some of the most arduous training that the U.S. has to offer, that the world has to offer, and they, like you say, a lot of them are break glass in case of war type guys. And then you put them in a place with a nebulous mission, with not a lot of support, and they want to do their job.
Yes. No, that's 100% right. Like it is. I don't, even though many of the failings were the people, the men on the ground. I'm a parent, right? And like, what do you do? Not to get like paternalistic about this, but like what do you do for your kids? Do you put them in a situation where they're guaranteed to fail, or do you set them up for success?
Right.
And I don't think that anybody inside NSW knew how to set up the SEAL teams for success for this particular mission set, because nobody had done it.
Right.
And it wasn't anything that we had ever really trained for. It wasn't anything that people are like, if you go be a Green Beret,
right,
you know that you're going to be doing FID. That's what you do. Like,
right.
You know that's part of it. And so even if it's not your favorite part of it, it's taken as a given. And, the SEAL teams are all about, special reconnaissance, direct action, and maritime ops. Like, those are the things that guys become frogmen for.
Right.
And that's why I became a frogman, because I wanted to do those things, because those are fun. So yeah, no, it's like the incentives were just aligned.
Yeah.
The incentives and the context were just like poorly aligned.
And to be fair, even a lot of the special forces guys in Iraq and Afghanistan didn't want to do the FID mission, the foreign internal defense. Yeah. They wanted to be door kickers too. Like, door kicking is sexy. That's what everybody wanted to do.
Good metrics.
And it also briefs a lot better.
Metrics.
Like, you can definitely brief. You can definitely brief how many bodies you stacked, right? Much better than you can how many people joined, what was it, the ALP or...
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was the Afghan local police, right? Yeah, no, it's 100%, which is why you would also get fake data going up about the ALP stuff. It's like, what else do we have to measure? Like, we talked to some people today and tried to get them to, talk to these other people.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
To snitch on locals who would kill them as soon as we left.
I'm more familiar with the Army side, and obviously you're way more familiar with the Navy side. But I'll just say this based on, a lot of the people I've talked to, that this isn't to excuse bad behavior. Grown men make decisions, and some of them are bad. But the flip side to that is that we deployed a lot of soldiers to a lot of bad places and just sort of left them out there flapping, and did that over and over again. They would lose some teammates out there in firefights, and those teams just got left out there. And that right around that time is when you start getting problems with the fentanyl and things like that going on. And truth be told, a lot of commanders built their careers on the backs of those guys who were just rode hard, and now we all know these guys, Dave, who are really struggling and having a hard time, and that's the other side of the story that needs to be mentioned, I think, when we talk about the war.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're totally right. You're absolutely right. And like, I don't think anybody comes away from a situation like that, like being left out to flap unscathed at all. The guys that were doing these, like, that were like making up ops or like trying to find, and it was because they were trying so hard to do the job that they were trained to do. Right. Like, it's just like it's just like taking an attack dog and like asking them to be a family pet. Right. You're in
a war zone and you want to get some.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that you've been training for years, for close to a decade in some cases, before like having had the opportunity, you get there and you're like, this is way too nebulous. I don't understand it. I'm going to try to make sense of this, and I'm going to put this round, square peg in a round hole. So for sure, and I think, Jack, like something you said about the guys that come back and have trouble, like, it's also not always the guys that you think.
Yeah.
Which is like one of those things that catches you off guard really hard sometimes. Like I came back and, like, truth be told, I was pretty messed up for a time after, like, from some of the things that happened there. There was a 10-year-old kid that blew himself up, and we're pulling pieces of his bones out of an Australian civilian's like body before we medevaced them out. And then I got written up because we did that in PT gear, because we were working out when the kid blew himself up, and we ran outside of Bob Mirwais in our PT gear because we were in the gym. And then we got written up for having been outside the wire in the wrong uniform. So like these things were just like completely traumatic, and then like your team, like their only response is like not, hey, good job, you saved this dude's life. You got all these guys medevaced when the Aussies couldn't leave the wire. No, the only response to that was like,
fuck you
for doing it. Fuck you for doing it in shorts, Dave.
What?
Yeah. So like you come back from that and you're like, I don't even know what. You just drink a lot.
Out of curiosity, was that NSW that wrote you up, or the Army that wrote you up? Because that sounds like an Army write-up.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? No,
yeah,
that was my very own command. That was my very own command. Yeah, the CEO had been at the White House. He was like some sort of fancy highfalutin fellow there for a couple of months, I think. And he's like, at my last job, you have to do everything as though the New York Times is there. As in the New York Times is going to take a picture of you.
David Phillips is out on patrol with you guys.
Yeah, dude. And you know what? If David Phillips had been out on patrol, you know what the fucking headline would have been? Like, SEALs save Australian civilian lives. Like that's what the headline would.
That's what happened.
We were in our shorts. Right. That would have been the. But in his view, it was irresponsible to be outside the wire, not in the proper uniform, regardless of context. And so Dave gets a non-punitive letter of caution, and all of these things.
Oh my God.
That must have just been soul crushing, though.
Dude, that between that and a couple of other situations where, friends of mine died, and then. Between those things, I came back and I was like, I was also not well. And it was nobody really knew, talking to people afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some dark times when I was driving way too fast, or we were jumping and I was pulling way lower than my skill set, said was wise, testing fate.
Yeah. Chasing that dragon.
You said there are these, teammates or Afghan teammates that you were talking about that.
In that case, Afghan teammates.
Yeah.
And
it's important to point out too, because I think a lot of Americans don't understand. For those of us who worked with Afghans closely, like how closely, like you shared meals with them. They were like your friend, like any other person, and to lose them was the same as losing any other friend.
No, it was no different. It was no different, except for the one aspect was that I knew these Afghans a lot better than everybody else did, because every meal I would be over there. I'd be over there between meals, having tea with them, talking, because I was with my notebook trying to learn the language. This was like what this is the mini, this is the mini task I gave myself. Like, okay, what is part of VSO? What's part of COIN? Like, well, I can't do any of these things if I can't communicate with the people. So like, let's take this time. It's free immersion, right? And so I was over there all the time. And so when like Mohammed Kanbar died, one of my friends, I also felt like I was the only one who the only one of us who knew how to mourn him. Nobody else knew how many kids he had. Nobody else knew what his wife's name was. Nobody knew how he took his tea. Like, I knew all these things. And so, I almost took more of it on myself because I knew nobody else would care as much as I did. And maybe that's not emotionally, it's not a healthy response, but it is absolutely what happened. So yeah, it was just as hard as losing any other friend.
Yeah. Did you have some good times over there in those 10.5 months?
Totally. And again, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can you tell us about some?
Yeah. So some of the things were, they're like the good times and the bad were mixed in a lot. But honestly, the time I spent with the Afghans, learning how to cook okra the way they do, learning about how they're growing the poppies and the almonds. Like I'm a big agriculture nerd. I'm a pretty passionate gardener. And that was like where I kind of picked up the curiosity about that, because I started asking questions, because like, what else is there to talk about? Like in this place, it's beautiful, but like, tell me about what's going on. And then I started seeing like how sophisticated a lot of the things were. So there were a lot of, I think the best parts of it were, one, knowing what happens, what I do when I get shot at. Like that was one thing that I wanted to know for myself. And I would say that's a high point to find out that like you can actually perform when you're being shot at, right? But the rest of the rewarding stuff was getting this like really deep exposure to like a really different kind of people, and finding the things that are like really, really impressive about them. Like Afghans don't complain. I remember this one time we were on like a 7-hour drive, and this entire valley we were going down looked like the moon. Like it looked like Mars from it looked like Mars. There was not a single living thing. And we're driving for basically all day, and we're just like miserable in the back of our Hiluxes doing this. And halfway there, there's this old Afghan guy with a sheet thrown over his back with some stuff in it, just walking. Like, we've been driving for 5 hours. We're going to drive for another 5 hours, something like that. And there's nothing in between those two spots. So you know that that's where he's going. He might be walking there for like 6 days. And was there like pity, or like misery on his face? No, he was just doing what he was doing. And like, I'll never forget driving by that guy and just seeing his face. Like, he was just like, no, this is just what I'm doing. I'm like, man, that old man is harder than any of us will ever be.
Yeah.
And we think we're tough. And you look at them and you're like, no, we're nothing. We're nothing. And there's other perspective shifting moments where we were there during Ramadan. And so like during the day, the families, and basically everybody would just be kind of like sitting out on the walls in the village, socializing, blankets down, tea, like, no, not tea, but like, blankets down, just hanging out, socializing in shade. And we were walking by, and I remember one of my guys starts talking shit about how lazy they are. I'm like, lazy? They're living a beautiful life right now. They're sitting around hanging out with the only people in the world that matter to them, and worrying about nothing. Mm-hmm. Like there's moments where I was like, oh shit, like these people actually have some things figured out that we could probably learn from. Like we could take some of these lessons. So like I think that those and the relationships I built with the Afghans that we were working with, and also like with my illegal interpreter, that were really wonderful. Like, and when I say illegal interpreter, this was a guy that got pinged by the CI, by Army counterintelligence, and like he got blacklisted. And I was trying to figure out why, because it happened before we got there. Turns out Max, my interpreter, had some physical relations with the CI guy's girlfriend. So Max got blacklisted because he was too charming.
That'll happen.
And yeah, that does happen. And I paid him off the books because he was really good, and I could tell. So yeah, like lots of like really wonderful perspective altering things. I think that's like that's the biggest thing, is there's a lot of really foreign experiences that I was able to integrate while I was there that I really appreciate still.
So how did that mesh with a community? And I'm going to talk about SEALs, but kind of any direct action element. I speak 556, right? That's the mantra. I speak 556 and 762. Like, were you sort of an odd duck, or did you?
Yes.
Okay.
There were a couple people who kind of got it, but didn't really invest in it as much. And then there were a lot of guys that were completely uninterested. So I'd spend all day over with the CMRG, the Civil Line Reduction Group guys, our partner force, our 1208 force. And they'd be playing video games, getting ready for the thing that we were going to go do that night. And so I think mostly the guys just missed out on some really extraordinary experiences. But yeah, I was definitely the an odd duck for that, at least inside my context.
Yeah. And in terms of missions, I know you said that like guys were going after whatever they could get, and we've all seen that before, where ops are driving intel, and where we want to get outside the wire. Did you guys have any successful missions or missions that you would consider successful?
We did have a couple. We did a couple of things. I think the biggest actual impact that we had while we were there was there was part of the valley where all of the hostile activity was coming from. Mostly guys putting out IEDs, but also the guys who were shooting at us, et cetera. They would, and so we took a bunch of HESCOs, and we basically built a wall across a narrow point of this valley, this area called Niazi, and put ALP checkpoints there, basically to control, personnel movement up and down the valley. And the moment that the moment it got started, but definitely the moment it finished, it was a massive, massive change in the amount of IEDs being found, amount of hostile activity that was going on in the area we were. There's a book called, I think it's called something like In the Warlord's Shadow. There's a chapter about this.
Yeah, Green
in his book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Green.
Yeah.
So he came out and saw the Great Wall of Chora. So I think that was probably the platoon's most successful contribution. But at the same time, I'm also quite certain that a year later, it was probably no longer a thing. Mm-hmm. Something like a transient victory, but definitely something in the right vein.
And so how did this deployment start to wind down as you get towards the end? You said you got extended because of the logistics issues. I mean, what was it like as we wind down that last month or so?
Yeah, so the last month or so, I was already at Siege of Sotif.
The Sotif, yeah.
So I didn't see like the platoon takedown, the platoon handover. So I couldn't say what the platoon was like. I could say that I was just working out to stay sane, and that was like all I was focused on.
Because what you're
trying.
Because what you were seeing
and
up
trying
at
not
the
to get yelled at
was a little disturbing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There was the starting to sort of process or not process the things that I had seen before and the things that had happened, but then there was also watching live feed of guys really well, Hilo getting shot down,
right.
Mm. And then seeing the paras go in and check them out, and just holding your breath, waiting for them to say that there are survivors, and there aren't.
Yeah.
Dave Warson and Pat Feeks were two friends of mine. I went to Buds with Dave Warson, and his 47 got shot down, and I had to go wake up guy who was in his platoon, who was like my nighttime counterpart, to go tell him that, hey, Dave and Pat are gone. And so, the Sotif was Siege of Sotif was an odd place. For the first time, I read Catch-22 there, which was an interesting choice, because there's this line in Catch-22 where he goes, the work we do here is not very important, but it's extremely important that people know we do quite a lot of it. And doing after action PowerPoint slides so the colonel can see what the tick was shaped like definitely it was a little too close to home for me. I probably wouldn't recommend somebody read Catch-22 working on a jock staff like that.
And
also it was run by the Army, and sergeant majors and I see very, very differently when it comes to military regulations.
Sure.
Sunglasses on the head, wrong colors of socks, these sort of things. I'm like, you guys are Green Beret sergeant majors. You're not sergeants major. You're not supposed to be like this. They're like, oh, we still went to sergeant major school. We had to pick a thing.
Right.
And fucking with SEAL JOs, that's our thing.
Right. Yeah, that's why I wondered about your write-up, because it very much sounds like an Army write-up and not a, How is your relationship with naval special warfare and the military in general at this point in time, and particularly after you getting written up like that?
Great question. My relationship was, fuck all these guys. I'm getting out as soon as I can. And so when we got back to Virginia Beach, well, we stayed they made a stop over in like Atlantic City, Maryland or something, for a day for our decompression stop. And all of us were pissed. We're like, our families are 4 hours away and you're going to make us stay here. Right.
Right.
So we did that. And I came back and basically like my wife picked me up. She didn't recognize me because when I left, I was 170 pounds. And when I got back, because I'd been lifting so much the entire time, I was 225, 230.
Holy
so
shit.
I put on a large dog over the deployment. And so between that and like, the change in here that lasted for years, she didn't even recognize me. I got off the bus and she like looked right past me waiting for me to get off the bus. But I basically, like, my relationship with NSW was I slept on my buddy's couch for 3-4 days until I could get all my gear turned in, signed off. And then I drove immediately across country to get away from that place before everybody got back. And my plan was to go, I took hard fill orders to this place called Support Activity where like nobody wanted to go because it was like an intel operation. It was not door kicking. It was explicitly not door kicking. And nobody wanted to go there. And my only goal was to get out of Virginia and to San Diego because I needed a fresh start for the last bit of my career. And so I took these hard fill orders to go to San Diego. And my plan was to just do I owed 14 months or something like that. So my plan was to just get out at my like minimum commitment and like move on with my life and pretend I'd never done it. And then right before, so I had my letter of resignation in, and right before that was going to take effect, a new CO came in to Support Activity, a guy named Mike Weiscutt, best officer I've ever worked for in my entire life. Like, he was spectacular, right, humble, and like, he was wonderful and absolutely incredible leader, very soft touch, but extremely, extremely high EQ. I went in to introduce myself because I had already taken over this tech shop at this command. And after 5 minutes of talking to him, I'm like, "Hey, sir, I know I have my letter of resignation in." He's like, "Yeah, I heard." I was like, "I'll pull it if you want me to keep doing this, because I'll work for you." And so I did, and ended up staying there for 5.5 years on 2-year orders, which is unheard of in NSW. I basically stashed myself into a warrant officer billet so that the detailers would sort of leave me alone. And then had like the best. This was like when I got the Support Activity, I was done. I wanted nothing to do. I didn't want to wear a uniform. I didn't want to have anything to do with NSW. And the next like 5 years were so good. The time there was so good after Mike showed up and like started transforming the command and like being a really exemplary leader. It was best job I've ever had, like hands down. And the best part was like, sometimes the stars align. Everything from our 06 down to my E6 LPO, everybody was like the best at that particular thing that I've ever worked with. And I'll always be grateful to my chief, this guy named Chuck Broadway. He was actually an IT chief. So like he'd been doing like tech ops stuff at Dev Group at Gold Squadron, and then came over to SA to lead the tech ops troop where we were, which is what I was in charge. So he was my chief, and he's like, "Guys, like, soak this in, because like this is a shot. This is a lightning striking. This is like a once in a career opportunity. Like, enjoy this, because it will never be this good again." And he said this on a regular basis, and we always like, Chuck, come on. I am so grateful to him for having said that, because I did, and it was hands down like that stint building tech with a bunch of ETs and ITs for NSW was the highlight of my career, and completely changed like the valence of my opinion of my time spent in NSW.
We talked about. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, if you can dive a little bit deeper into that and tell us about what the intelligence support activity in this Intel Fusion team was. Like, what were you guys doing? What was the job there?
And what was it when you got there And then how did it change under the new CO?
Yeah, those are so the command is now called Special Reconnaissance Team, and it's an Intel Fusion command. I'm going to get this wrong because it was always changed. There's more than a dozen different rates there. So basically, every branch of intelligence so there's HUMINTers, SIGINT, UAS, Intel guys and women, really incredible Intel capability, METOC, and then SEALs, and a bunch of other rates, all kind of ETs and ITs that were working for me, all come together, build up their individual skills, and then they join together sort of a couple from each of these disciplines, each of the pillars, into this cross-functional team, which then does a workup and deploys forward and builds intel packages. When I got there, it was essentially a place where team guys would only go to it was the place to go because you weren't going to do any work, and like you would park old guys on their way out while they're doing their medical, right? Like they would do terminal leave out of SA because that was just the only people you could get there. At one point, the CFT deployed in Iraq was responsible for something insane, like 95% of all the like successful kinetic strikes in Iraq during their deployment. So like it went from this place where you park old guys to like this incredibly high performing team that is now it's a screening command. Like it's actually it's really difficult to get there now because it is such a great mission. It's like I consider it kind of the future of NSW, because frogmen are not going to like you're not going to go sit up on a hill like in a peer conflict and like poop in a bag and send like radio messages back home. Like that radio is going to get picked up immediately. There's imagery and all these sensors that are one going to do a better job of reporting what's actually there than you are, and two, like what you would never risk a human for this op. So like it really became, in my mind, like the future of NSW. Like I almost feel like SEALs are not the past, but they're not necessarily like the tip of the spear future because of the way the world has changed. And so this place became that.
And it was, you credit it pretty much to this CEO who came in and changed the culture.
There was a lot of context and a lot of like other things that also had to happen. Mm-hmm. But I would say without Commander Wisecup and without his XO Dave Dukazow, who's he's by far the best XO like that I could have imagined for that point. And then the XO that came after him, Chris Kelly, was also spectacular. So we had like this trifecta of leadership, and the enlisted leadership was also incredibly high quality. And so all of them together, it completely transformed the command. It became a place where, the CO would actually like walk around. He had this thing where he would walk around and he had a notebook with everybody's name, with everybody's information in it, so that he could kind of keep it was almost like an internal CRM, so that he could make sure that he like connected with people that needed it. Like here's a perfect example. My daughter, my youngest child, was turning 1. She was big into Peppa Pig. I'm not sure if you guys know Peppa Pig.
Oh, yes.
But, okay. All right. So she was massively into Peppa Pig. Well, Mike and his wife showed up to the birthday party. We didn't invite them because it was like kind of inappropriate, but they swung by to drop off a present. And it was a Peppa Pig book. And they knew this because he had overheard me talking to somebody else about how my daughter loves Peppa Pig. But he took that, like overhearing a conversation, and turned it into this like really wonderful gesture. That like man, once you show that like you care about my children, like that's it for me. That's like my one bar. Like if you get over that bar, like I'm willing to forgive a lot of things for somebody that cares for my kids, because like that's, we're dads, right? And so imagine that, but like it wasn't that I was special. It was that he did this a lot. In a lot of different cases. Somebody graduated college, like he would call it out at quarters. Like it was very human, and so people felt seen and connected to the mission. And when you feel seen, connected to the mission, given the resources to do your job well, it sort of lights things on fire. And for a while there, it was like riding a rocket ship. for all of the things that were going on at the command because of this, because everybody felt like empowered and like they belonged. And I'm sure you guys have seen this, like in the teams, there's this tendency, like frogmen are here, techs and enablers are here, second class, third class citizens, maybe. For a while there, it wasn't like that. It was just like team. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think that was really the secret. Like that was the end result there, was that everybody was just part of the team, just pulling.
It's interesting too, because it seems like you experience like the two extremes of the military, right? That so many people they hate the military because they had bad leadership. And then you have people who love the military because they had great leadership. And even if they were in the same units, their experiences were completely different.
Yeah. No, I actually am like really grateful for, in a way, grateful for the negative experiences, because it's one of those things, like until you've been down really far, like you can't really put you have to dig before you put a foundation down, right? And like
right.
I dug, and then we put in a pretty solid foundation. And like, I don't think that I would be the person I am without having gone through the really bad things. There's post-traumatic stress disorder, but there's also post-traumatic growth, right? And like sometimes one comes out of the other. And I feel like that that the fact that the second half of my career was so incredibly restorative gave me the context, the strength, the perspective to understand the first part better.
So you're running this tech shop before he shows up, and then you're running this tech shop after he shows up. What did that look like here for you? How did that change? How did that tech shop change?
The tech shop changed. It was partly because of him, and partly because of the like I said, the new XO that came in. I think that what happened was that there was a change of the entire character of the place, where all of a sudden the things that we were trying to do, the suggestions that we were making about, hey, we could do this op, instead of doing it with that guy, why don't we do it with this thing that we can build? Like we became an equal seat at the table. And that showed, that gave us the ability the opportunity to prove that what we were doing was actually valuable. That it was sometimes better to send, a piece of technology than two guys on a jet ski with a backpack. The risk calculation there is not the same. And if you can show that you can get the job done with one, why risk two guys?
Honestly, though, two guys on jet skis with backpacks has cool. So much cool factor that the guys who want to do it are going to argue for it all day long.
100%. And they, not everybody was a huge fan of the new direction of NSW that we were pushing. And I understand that. If I had an opportunity to go do some cool guy stuff on a jet ski, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm going.
Right.
It doesn't even matter.
Right.
I'm going. Right. Is this stupid? Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Could you talk, to the extent that you're able, about like some of these like new technologies that you were able to integrate into the force? I've been told, for instance, that NSW has actually developed a really robust drone program, and it's something they've gotten very good at.
Yeah, so that could be one of two things. One, there is a UAS capability out of the command, where scan eagles mostly. And then if you're talking about, there's also a tech company that's started by a former team guy officer and his brother, who's an AI guy called Shield AI, that is like basically like got its start at the innovation director at Warcom, Naval Special Warcom. That's our 2-star command. I believe they're funded by like Andreessen Horowitz now, and all of those things. So it's a large company. A lot of guys that I used to work with now work for them. So I'm not sure which one of those two things you're referencing. I'm not sure which one.
I don't know. Maybe both. I've been told in general that the command has gotten pretty good with it.
Yeah, the Scan Eagle debts that come out of SRT are extremely good, like really, really, really good, and really, really valuable. And while we were there, they were having such success that one of the admirals at the time was talking about how he wanted to take some platoons down from the teams and use that headcount to build more UAS debts. And that was like, let me tell you, like the SEAL admiral telling the SEALs, like, hey, you guys are going to support this new UAS capability, not the other way around. That definitely caused some heads to spin. But I think he was right. Like that's how you get the missions.
As a former tech guy going to SEALs and now coming back into tech in support of the United States missions, I imagine you had a bit of a different perspective because you had that background and you were an operator. Like, what were some of the changes that you saw and that you see coming forward?
I think that I was like at the beginning of this like kind of cohort of people that have like, there are a lot of guys now that have played with, Raspberry Pis in college or in high school. And so they bring that knowledge forward and they're not thinking necessarily about what they get to do, but like what's the mission and what's the best way to solve it, and which of these things in my quiver can I use to solve it, like what's the most effective thing. So I think there's a lot more of that simply because of how widespread things like Raspberry Pis and learning to code to some extent, like little electronics projects, how prevalent those have become. And so we started as I was leaving. It started to be like a lot of new guys who were like, oh, this is awesome. What about this? What about this? What about this? And then they would come back like the next day and bring this thing that they made and be like, hey, what do you guys think about this? We could do something like just kind of spitballing ideas. And we got some like really good operational ideas out of those conversations. But it started, once it was known that it was a thing that would get that was like blessed off as like a realm of like, this is a weapon that you can use. Guys started coming out of the woodworks that were like playing with these things in their garages. Guys that were more passionate about it than I was.
That's cool.
Like, I wasn't actually like massively into the tech. I was into the team, like the people, and enabling these really brilliant guys that worked for me to like do the best expression of like their best work. That was the thing that lit me on fire, was not the actual tech, but there were guys coming in after me. Like I knew about it. There were guys after me that were really passionate about it. And coming up is like E5s, E6s in the teams. And that's like more and more prevalent. So I the children will save us, right?
Do you see the special operations community at some point, like where everything used to be so physical, right? And there would be teamwork and some logical problem solving stuff. But do you ever see special operations including almost a tech portion to their selections?
I don't know. I kind of think not. I think that the way these things have happened in the past is, and you guys have much deeper like military knowledge than like military history knowledge than I do, but it seems like units don't tend to morph too much. They tend to be like usurped by other things, and so it's I don't see like buds having a programming challenge. Like I don't think that that's a thing that's ever going to happen. I think that if there comes a point where we're like, okay, we actually have too many frogmen, but we need more techs doing this thing, that'll come out of the organic capability, and it'll come with that load balancing of like headcounts based on what's needed, and that's how the change will happen. Less that SEALs will learn how to do commercial off-the-shelf electronics manipulation.
Interesting. When Jack and I went to DEF CON, like one of the villages or one of the rooms was like taking over a ship.
Oh yeah.
Via cyber, and there were multiple ways to do it, right? And the goal of the CTF teams was to crash the ship somehow. Do you see like this handshake between like SEALs and the tech world, or integrated units that are slowing down ships so they can do their shipboarding and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think that's totally realistic. I think that's like a natural outgrowth of the sort of like Intel Fusion things that are happening inside NSW, and I know the tier one units got like similar things going on. So yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Like that's just another tool in the toolbox, for sure.
It's fascinating.
Using cyber to enable the kinetic actions.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. My personal fantasy, being a sci-fi nerd, is Section 9 from Ghost in the Shell, where you see these people who are like, they're government, black bag operators, but at the same time, they're heavily into cyber and sabotage and all these sorts of things, disinformation, all sort of blended into one team, which is hard to do, but it does seem like we're headed in that direction.
It does. I just wonder whether there's much crossover between the pipe hitters who are like down for the physical part and the people that are drawn to like, exactly. Because the people I know that are like heavy hitters when it comes to DevOps and cybersecurity would definitely not be mistaken for being a team guy.
Right.
In any context. So I wonder what the crossover is there.
Yeah,
that might be like a Jason Bourne thing. But like definitely like if that job were available, I would be like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
It sounds awesome.
And it's interesting too, because making the parallel connection, I don't know how it is now, but there was a time when you were in trouble with Johnny Law, because you were a rapscallion, you could enlist in the military, and often you ended up, in the special operations community because you already sort of had that sort of in the gray zone mentality. And yet, for the kids coming, there are obviously a lot more opportunities for kids in cyber now with CTFs and Hack the Box and, things like that. But the ones who are good at it still want to get out there and break shit. And we still haven't come to the same sort of relationship with them, I think, in that, okay, yeah, when you were a kid, you did some stuff you probably shouldn't have, and now you're in front of the judge, and here's a cyber route for you.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing that jumps into my mind when you say that is, one, like that would be really awesome, but two, that there's so many things, like you can't have a criminal anything on your background to go to Buds now. Like there's this background, like it actually, like we can't do that anymore, even if that's valuable, because like, guys have to lie about having had weed in high school one time, or these sorts of things in order to get it. Or like I had an ankle surgery. I covered up an ankle surgery when I went. They're like, "How any joint surgeries?" Nope. Yeah. And I was just praying they didn't wand my ankle where there's a screw. Yeah. So like, doing that with criminal situations, like it feels like it could be a good idea, but it also feels like something that we're not going to do.
Yeah. And 5.5 years at this intelligence team, you decided to get out of the Navy. What was it like transitioning out of the Navy back into civilian life?
Yeah, it was. I don't think I did a really good job at it. I think a lot of guys do. I had a lot of pride that because I had done I'd done the startup before and I had multiple jobs, like I was going to get out, I was going to be fine. And I actually don't think I did a very good job at it. There were a lot of things that had I had sort of had ingrained in me. Like I joined when I was 22 and I got out when I was like 33. So like I joined as a boy, left as a man, and like you kind of absorb the water you're in. Like those are formative years for all of us, right? That's why we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
But so there were things that really, really caught me off guard. Like the first thing I did was I started a startup. And the actual startup is irrelevant. It was a bad idea and I did it poorly. But the thing I noticed is that like inside a soft community, there's such thing as a reputation. Like if I tell you I'm going to do something and then I don't do it, even if you and I never interact again, like you and I know 500 of the same people, right? And so like people will know very quickly that you backed out on something you said you would do. Well, the wide world is so disconnected, so wide, so dispersed that like people will regularly say like, yes, I will. Yeah, I'll. We had one company who was like, oh yeah, we'd love to try this, but we would want it to have this one more feature. So we spent the next 2 weeks crushing it to like build this one more feature. Got it done, and it worked great, exactly like they wanted. Couldn't get an email or a call back from anybody at the company ever again. And I was like, you guys should have just said you weren't interested.
Right.
But like, they didn't want to. They just wanted it to sort of go away. And so I started to learn that when people tell you something in the wide world, like it is not the same as another team guy saying, yeah, I'll do this. And the other thing I noticed is like one of my jobs, in some ways resembled one of my software development jobs. In some ways resembled the SEAL teams in that it was extremely high quality people all around. Like the cream of the crop. It was highly selected. But the thing that caught me off guard and I didn't recognize for a while is that they're thinking about performance and not support. Like if you're doing a workup with a platoon, right, or with a team, and one guy's having trouble with 2-man room clearances, what do? Like you stay late. Yeah, you stay late and you take care of him, right? Because like all of you are together, right? That's what you do, like without even thinking about it. Not a lot of places are like that. It's like they're coworkers, not teammates. Mm-hmm. And so like those are the big like cultural shifts. And I didn't even recognize it until I went back to San Diego, and I was up late with my former LPO, who's now a senior chief, which always makes you feel good to see your boys like moving up. But it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was getting ready to leave. And I asked him for some Windex to clean off the windshield in the car I had borrowed because it was dirty and it was hard to drive at night with it. And he's like, I'm not giving you Windex. I'm gonna come out there and clean it with you. And then we shot the shit for 10 minutes while we cleaned up the car and gave the whole car like a little detailing for the person to let me borrow it. And like, oh, I forgot about this. I forgot about this team orientation. Like it was like being able to like have full capacity of your lungs again. And so I think those were like the two big like things with transition. Oh, I think the other thing is when I got out, like when I was in, you can judge by the pictures I sent for the thumbnail. Although D did choose the shirtless one, so that's not
the thumbnail for this video is a war crime in of itself.
A sexy war crime.
Yeah, very sexy one.
I know, right? I know. So I didn't have a lot of pictures of me like working, because I like internalized maybe too much the whole silent professional thing.
Right.
And so when I got out, you have to talk about yourself.
Sure.
If you don't talk about yourself, then people won't know who you are, won't know what to expect from you. But it feels really, really, really awkward talking about yourself at first. At least it did for me. It took a long time for me to get comfortable with even just talking about basic. Yeah, I was a SEAL. Not the most important thing about me, but it is something. So I think those three things were like the biggest like weird transition things.
We talked about that a little bit before the show, how, guys, people coming out of the military, I don't want to just say guys because guys too, but people coming out of the military, they tend to go one of two ways a lot of times, especially in the special operations community. They either make a living on their background, which is fine. Like if you went to Harvard, you would make a living, you would tell people you went to Harvard, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But they go into leadership or tactical or whatever they do, and that's who they are. And then other people try to create a new persona, like they divorce themselves from it for a while. And maybe it's because those people we're wrestling with, who are we after this? Or like, well, I don't want to say in your case because you had great experiences after bad experience, but some people had really bad experiences and don't want to talk about it anymore. But whatever it is, they divorce themselves and they feel, and like you say, they take the silent professional too far, where it's like, this is a part of my pedigree. It is a part of my past, like maybe not the most important thing, but it's something worth mentioning. And it does open doors at times.
Yeah. I overcorrected like the wrong way with that. I was terrified of being the guy who's like still trying to be a SEAL when he's not. And I've developed some empathy for that position. now. I'm certainly not going to do it because it doesn't feel true to me. But I definitely spent years trying to sort of like draw a line and completely reinvent myself. And it wasn't until I went back. So I went back to San Diego because Bobby Ramirez, who was the CEO of SEAL Team 1, died. Unexpected. And this is like a man of incredible character. Like universally acknowledged incredible character. In fact, you mentioned like cultural problems inside the SEAL teams. When he got announced as the CEO of SEAL Team 1, I called him because I wanted to congratulate him, tell him like this makes me happy because even though I'm not in the teams anymore, I care very much about the community. Like it is, it's part of me. And so I called him to say, hey, congratulations. Like this makes me feel good because if there's somebody I know who can help the teams turn the corner for like in the way that we need to right now, you're the guy. Like you're the guy. So like good luck and like I'm cheering for you. And so like when he died, there were a ton of people that came back to his funeral, to his memorial. And it sort of conversation around beers at McPee's, like the SEAL bar on Coronado, talking about Bobby, talking about like how life is out. We had all sort of like tried to find some way to kind of like carve up our lives. And we all sort of like realized at the same time, like the answer is not carving that part out, but it's sort of like reintegrating it. Mm-hmm. And so like that whole experience of going back and, paying our respect to a guy to a man we loved. And then like feeling how deeply ingrained the traditions of NSW are and how good they feel to take part in them, to like be able to show our respect for a man like Bobby. It reminded me that like that is actually a really, really important part of me and that I should stop trying to carve it off. And that I should, and in fact, just like let it sort of reintegrate it and become like a more whole, complete, honest with myself version. In fact, Dee had been after me for like almost a year, probably, to like come on your podcast. And I finally said yes. Yeah, you guys were persistent, but I appreciate it because this is great. But the reason why I said no, I finally was like, okay, yeah, like let's do early March was right after Bobby's thing. I was like, I need to what I didn't want to do, I didn't want to talk to you guys about being a team guy too much because I didn't want that to be me. Right. I didn't want me to be like, also I felt self-conscious because you guys have some real badasses on here, like some crazy badasses you guys talk to. And then there's like me like, with my big bottle of water and my real short shorts, so like, but that reintegration I think was like really valuable. And I would say to people, like guys that are getting out, to like not try to draw the line too hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Merging those two personalities is difficult.
You mentioned, I don't remember if it's during the show or before, but you mentioned that you went through some sort of dark periods afterwards.
Yeah.
Can you tell us sort of your dark night of the soul and how you found your way out of that?
Yeah. I actually think that I wrote a thread about it on Twitter once, and I think that's how like Jack and I first like knew that the other one existed, because it was like one of those things that kind of blows up on you. I had like 800 people who followed me on Twitter, and then I wrote this thing about like my combat, like about all the different ways that people had seen me throughout my entire SEAL career, and it just exploded. I was talking to like, there were like 5 people that would actually talk to me before, and all of a sudden like I shared this like intimate thing, and all of a sudden it just exploded, and I was like really, really uncomfortable with this whole situation. I almost deleted it a couple of times, but I got back from deployment, and I was conflicted about a lot of things, about whether any of it mattered, about whether I did the right thing when things were hard, about whether I could have done something better and prevented some of the really bad things from happening. I was drinking too much. I was drinking way too much, like 2 bottles of wine a day. Like it was ridiculous. And like right at this point, like when I started spiraling downward, my wife had her first kid. So like you can imagine how shitty a father, how shitty a lack of husband I was. I was a black hole over here, like, and like I will always regret that, even though like I recognize the reasoning, like I recognize why, but like this is something I'll go to my grave regretting how poor a husband and like father I was when my son was first born. But I had all of this like unprocessed everything, and didn't know what to do with it. And there, like I said, there were points where I was taking too many risks and all of these things. Never tried to kill myself, but like I definitely was like rolling the dice a little bit because I was too much of a coward, right? Or maybe I knew better. Like part of me deeper down knew better and was like, I don't want to, but like I feel like I want to. And there was this. I remember like the first time when I realized something was off, because like that's just your life. Like you just like kind of sink down and like everything around you is dark and like, you just think the world is dark. Like you have no perspective. And there was this moment, by the way, like that feeling, the fact that I've been down in that like dark place, I think a lot of us have been, like it is the thing that without that experience, I would not understand why people would kill themselves, like why we have a suicide problem among veterans. I wouldn't have understood it unless I had like gone through it, because I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? There's always Thailand. Like you can always just like go AWOL and go do just go hedonism for like 3 months and then you'll probably be fine, and it's whatever happens is better than being dead.
Right.
Like that would have been my reasoning before, but now like I recognize like you don't see that. It's like you're just sinking and the whole world is dark. People ask like, should NSW have done something better when you came back? And I could tell you that like NSW does everything it can. Like they make you talk to like 6 different psychs on the way back in, and you lie your face off to all of them, and like that's not their fault, right? So I don't think like it's a systemic problem with like the VA or the military in general necessarily, like in that context. But the thing that like made me realize that something was off was we had started a garden in our backyard in San Diego, kind of on an aesthetic lark. We're like, we got the spot in the yard. Like, what are we going to do? All right, let's put some raised beds and plant some vegetables. Like, fuck it. It was a purely aesthetic lark. And I was down in the garden. I would come home from work and I'd go down in the garden and just kind of like take care of it. And, with tomatoes, you pinch off the extra growth so they put their extra energy into the actual fruit and not the plant. And I was pinching off tomatoes and like the smell hit me. And all of a sudden I was just like right there, like present, and I could breathe for a second. Like the garden was the thing that made me stop thinking about all of these other things. And it became like this meditation for me. And I realized, oh wait, like there's something more here in the world that's not this dark shit. I should maybe start working on that. Like, I don't know how, I don't know like what that even looks like, but you get the inkling that there's like something other than the dark place. And so I sort of started digging out, and I thought I was dug out, but I wasn't. Like this has happened like a dozen times. Like it's multiple steps and you always think you're done and then you're not. I think that's probably the entire story of life, right? Like you think you're digging out and then like you're not actually. There's another thing to do. I had a psychiatrist who probably saved my life by putting me on sleep pills for a little bit. Like I don't recommend sleeping pills for like normal situations, but like to put a net on the bottom of like to arrest a fall, like just a dead fall, which I was in, like that was helpful. But he suggested I do like some mindfulness meditation. I was like, fuck you, I'm not doing that. That sounds stupid. And then I finally gave in. I went to this thing at Balboa and I left after about 20 minutes because the dude next to me was there for this like mindfulness course because he was scared of the showers on the ships. I was like, I'm not like you, man. I don't want that. I don't want to feel like you and I are this like dealing with the same thing. And then I finally like heard it from enough people that I just decided to like go off the deep end. And I went to this 10-day silent retreat, the Vipassana retreat, 10-day silent meditation retreat. And it was miserable. It was absolutely miserable, horrible. The entire time, like I'm convinced, and at this point, by the way, like to give you a timeline context and like how much of a saint my wife is, we had 2 boys at this time, and she's 8 months pregnant with my daughter. So I go away for 10 days to like the Joshua Tree Desert to do this like meditation bullshit. And she's at home like managing the 2 boys while she's like incredibly pregnant and like all of these things. So I am convinced the entire time, like I'm sitting there like trying to meditate, and I'm convinced, absolutely convinced, that by the time I go back, if I stay this whole time, she will have taken the kids and left. And what's more is that I will not hold, like I wouldn't hold it against her, because I was, like I said, I was a garbage husband and a garbage father for for these years when I came back. And so I had to learn to sit with that, because I knew that she would call me out if I didn't do it. She's like, "Oh, you're not even going to take care of yourself?" Like, all right. Like, I'm going to sit with this. And like, so I had to like make my peace with the fact that they might leave because of things that I had done, and I would deserve it. And I realized that the only thing I had control over was the fact that I loved them, and that anything else was me expecting something in return, which is like by definition not selfless. And so like I sat with that for like 10 days, and there were points where like your body would hurt, and then all of a sudden that pain would dissolve, and then all of a sudden you get this taste in your mouth, and you're like, oh, that's the taste of shame. Like, it makes no sense. Sounds completely woo. I am not that guy, but like that is the thing that happened to me. It tasted like shame. And I got back, drove home at the speed limit from Joshua Tree to San Diego. Like I hadn't driven the speed limit in half a decade, right? Like I drove home at the speed limit and was cool with it, which I was like, that's weird. But I didn't really feel different because I had like these like changes that sort of integrated. I got home, we sat down on the couch, and after about 5 minutes, my wife said, "Hey, I want to stop you real quick. I just want you to know that like this last like 10 days was hard managing the kids while she's super pregnant and all that." She's like, "But it's already been worth it. Like the change in you that I can tell in 5 minutes has already been worth it." And so like those 2 things, like the garden and the garden and then that meditation retreat, were like these 2 huge handholds for me, like kind of pulling myself up out.
Well, and even the garden, you talk about the Vipassana and meditation, but even the garden itself, that moment was mindfulness, right?
100%. It was, I didn't know what it was. But yeah, it was absolutely like I was present. I was experiencing things with all of my senses. I was doing something physical. Also, I think there's part of it that has to do with like when you're raising a garden, when you're growing a garden. We grow a huge garden every year. Have chickens and all that stuff because it's been so formative. Like it's like part of us now. But like you deal with a lot of death in, our former jobs. And there's something about a garden that is like helping create the conditions for life. And it feels healing, restorative in that way too, I think. Balance.
You mentioned how when you're in it, like you don't know. And I think that's one of the things that, whether you're former military and you have this post-traumatic stress, or you're a civilian and you have post-traumatic stress for another reason, that it's very insidious, right? That like you say, like you not only were probably not only were you lying to the shrinks, but you're probably lying to yourself about how you felt.
Oh yeah, 100%. Because you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy that can like push it down and be stoic about it. Like nobody wants to be the guy that like is a hot mess. But like there were definitely points. I think another point that I realized something was wrong was that I apparently chewed somebody out, like some bosun's mate at the command. And somebody told me about it the next day, and I had zero recollection of it. Like there were weeks that were just complete blackout for me. And it wasn't because I was like drunk at work. I was never drunk at work, ever. It was just like the cortisol just hijacking my brain. Like it was like my head was in a microwave and the microwave was like on 10.
Yeah.
Memory's fallible under the best circumstances, but like your own perception of the world and your place in it can get so ungrounded that nothing makes sense, and things that don't make sense are the only thing that you can think of.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's also, in maybe, I don't know if this was your experience, but you can also look at somebody who had it worse, the people in Afghanistan, the people who, were no longer living, the people who lost limbs, and say, how can I bitch about it when I'm whole and healthy?
100%. 100%. Like you don't want to take that away from them.
Right.
Like and so like, I think that there's some part of one of the things that causes people to consider like suicide is that they are almost scared to get help because they don't. I think that's a really great point, Dave. And like it's also that like they're scared to get the help, but then they also don't want to be the guy who has committed these sins or had these problems and didn't show any way of atoning for it. So there's almost like I'm sorry, like I feel bad about this, but I can't do anything. So like this is the only thing I can think of to do.
Mm-hmm. Do we have questions for Dave?
Let me see. Dave, also check your Twitter because I know people probably asked you questions there.
Mostly they asked me to take my shirt off, I think.
Well,
if you want to show those pepperonis off,
I mean,
it's happened before.
No.
It's happened before.
No,
next
I'm
time,
good.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say that's another team guy cliche, like going to a bar. Like, how do you know somebody's in a bar? Like, a guy's a SEAL. Like, oh, because he took his shirt off in the bar.
I was gonna say that next time we have you on and you're in the studio, we'll make sure that you're lacking the good
So
sense.
you're gonna get me intoxicated, so I strip. I understand. Okay, all right, that's fine.
We don't have any supers, I don't think, but no. But let's ask about the homesteading because that's what is that? What does that mean, and how did you get into that?
Yeah, well, so I mean, full qualification. I would not consider myself like a full-fledged homesteader. We're on an acre here, so we have a large garden, a bunch of fruit trees. We do a bunch of our food scraps go to the chickens who make compost. Then they use that compost and put it on the garden. So we try to like minimize our resource flows more than like doing like practical homesteading because, like I said, we're not on enough space to do that. Hopefully, soon we will be, but we're not right now. So it's mostly about, it's a combination of the like connection to like the real rhythms of the world, like the seasons, the rain, like these things mean different things to you if you're growing a bunch of your own food. If you're a gardener, your relationship with the moon and the sun and the weather is like very practical and it's it's immediate. And there's something about that kind of grounding because like life can be really, really comfortable, almost too comfortable. And I like the fact that it gives you a spot to put your feet. And so the other thing is that like food supply chains are incredibly, incredibly fragile. Mm-hmm. As you saw when like people were making all the Twitter jokes about like, hey, look at these eggs I've got, I'm a billionaire. Like, we were never short on eggs. We're never short on greens. Like there's a E. coli outbreak at this thing. It doesn't matter. We get our meat from somebody down the road who raises the pigs. Like his name's Tim. Like I know the guy who raised the pigs that we eat, and we go direct to him. So we get a good deal. He gets a good deal, and then we have a freezer full of pork. So like we try to keep our inputs and outputs as minimal as possible.
Does homesteading include generally, and then for you specifically, include like your energy? Like are you on the grid, off the grid? How does that work?
Are you collecting illegal rainwater? That's what we really want to know.
I think in Oregon you're allowed to collect rainwater.
You are.
It's called I know in Colorado you're not allowed to, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like,
wow.
You can't collect rainwater there. It's absolutely nuts. You can't dig ponds there in a lot of places because you're disrupting the water flow. When actually, if you look at it, like we disrupted the water flow by killing all the beavers, and like people building ponds are actually doing something good. But like so we're not off grid. We can operate like we have a generator that can connect to the propane, et cetera. So like we can keep our power on all those things. And we do most of our heating with a wood stove. But we're not like really legit off grid. This place is an old schoolhouse built in like the 1880s, so it's not well insulated. It's creaky. It's got all that character, but like it would be difficult to take this place off grid, especially since there's 200-year-old Doug firs to the south of us, so that blocks most of the summer sun on the house. So like we can't do solar or anything like that either. So it's minimal. We're resilient, but not off grid.
Gotcha.
We do have one super chat that just came in. It's from None. Thank you very much. Dave, thanks for sharing and keeping it real. Also, please take your shirt off. I'm going to put out a thing here. How about just one, minimum $5 super chat for Dave to pluck us a few bars of his favorite song on the uke.
Oh man, that's a good one.
You're gonna make me perform. That's a good one. Amateur shit here.
Look, man.
While we're waiting for someone to man up,
ukuleles are classic.
I got my mandatory self promotion. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and check the link down in the description for our Patreon if you want to get access to all these episodes ad free.
Jimmy Trimble, thank you very much for the super. What's your assessment of the DoD innovation ecosystem, especially the new Office of Strategic Capital? Any chance you venture into that?
Because
sphere?
you're kind of back in that realm a little bit, right?
I am. That's actually a really that's a good question. So for people without the background context here, the biggest thing preventing the military from adopting like modern tech is the acquisition process. It's long, it's slow, there's a shit ton of paperwork. Pretty much everything is piped through like a couple of prime vendors who have these like pipe contracts that they can like run as much money through as they want to. It's not competitive. It's actually really, I understand why it is the way it is, because there's so many laws they have to like follow to keep track of all the tax dollars. But at the same time, it's absolutely insane. There's been a lot of like sort of side runs around this, like building contracts that can then be done through. There's this place called DIU, Defense Innovation Unit. It was in Palo Alto area, Mountain Park area, and so they basically will give you a contract that's like a pipe, and then you can get money from anywhere, and it can go through that pipe and go to the company. And that seems to be, that was nascent when I left. It was like just getting started when I got out. But it's actually the company I write code for now is actually on a bunch of contracts through DIU, and it's still a process. But compared to what it was 5-6 years ago, it is day and night difference, and that is like blazing speed of adaptation for like the DoD. So I think that a lot of the end runs that they're making are for the contracting to give you the ability to, like, a unit can go out and say, I want something made by this company and I want them to do it in X way, and here's how we pay for it. The mechanism's there now. So I think DoD is actually doing a reasonably good job of adapting to that. Because before, what would happen would be like, okay, I want to buy this, but the money's not going to clear for 36 months. And like, what company has 36 months of just like free runway where they're not going to cash flow anything before they're going to take their tech and they're going to go take it out into the civilian world? Like, so if you want something to be, even if they want to like provide their tech to DoD, like they can't. And that's down a lot. Like I've seen contracts get like, companies get money in like 30, 45 days, which is absolutely nuts, like way different. So I actually think the DoD is doing a really good job at that.
Yeah, there was a time, I mean, like we're talking about like the 90s, where what the military had on their shelves compared to what you could just go to REI or someplace else. And I'm not even talking tech now, but just basic gear.
It's still like that, man. Is when if they want to acquire a new rifle, a new machine gun.
Let's just talk about a sleeping bag. You know, the technology of a sleeping bag, right? That when it comes to tech, you know, it used to be that off the shelf purchases down at, you know, Radio Shack or whatever were better than what you could get, you know, through the military procurement system for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's. It's been solved for technology and specifically, but I mean, when I was at 2, we all went out to go get multicam cries because the uniforms they gave us were, one, like some weird digicam that didn't work for the place where we were going, but two, the crotch would tear out after about 2 weeks of wearing them. And so everybody bought cries on their own dollar. And those are cheap.
Yeah.
But like they got outbid.
And we do have a taker for
All
the
right.
ukulele.
Let's see your skills
and
as
I
a
put 'em
musical
up for this.
bard.
Ian Hutchinson, thank you very much. I'm going to let you slide with your $5 Canadian because I don't know what that is in the U.S. I feel like we're getting ripped off here, but I don't know.
He's bidding with funny money.
That's right. It's like Monopoly money.
It's 47 cents. I just did the math. Doesn't count.
There you go.
All right. Yeah, shit. I don't know. Okay. I can't tell. Is this coming across?
Yeah.
Is this coming across? Okay.
That's not.
Yeah, stand up so
Yeah.
maybe you're in front of the speaker.
Okay.
Let,
Oh no, my speakers are in my ears. They're getting noise canceled.
Oh.
Here, let me try pulling this.
Oh no.
I was going to say, let's stand up. Let's see those shorts.
I'm wearing pants right now. So.
All right.
All right.
No, it's still.
We're still not getting it.
Can you hear this?
No.
All right. I guess I need to. Next time I'm gonna have to get my audio situation squared. Like you can hear my voice though.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you
were,
fine.
were you doing the fake strum thing?
Hold on. I'll go right up against the computer.
Yep.
Yeah.
You hear that?
Yeah.
And nothing.
Are you playing? Because we don't hear anything.
Yeah, I'm playing.
Oh my gosh.
Ian,
We tried.
thanks for your
All right.
43 cents. We deeply apologize.
Technical issues. Just when we think we're all set up for audio and video.
Reach out to Dave at Aspiring Peasant, and maybe he'll send you
a Twitter video.
a Twitter video. And then DC Photo 4, thank you very much. Who do you think is better suited in the present and future to partner for us build maritime soft capabilities? The SEALs or MARSOC?
Oh, that's a little spicy.
Ooh.
That is spicy. And my answer is going to be kind of sacrilegious, is I don't think it matters. Honestly, and I would say that each of them is going to have their strengths. SEALs get better. At least when I was exposed to MARSOC, SEALs got more and better training. And the MARSOC guys, like, because the Marine Corps doesn't want them to be too special. However, I would say that the MARSOC guys that I met have been incredibly professional because they're Marines. And I actually think that professionalism might give them the advantage when it comes to training partner force soft, because Marines have a lot of discipline and in my experience, have been more even keeled than my SEAL than my SEAL brethren. So I'm going to give it to MARSOC actually.
Do you feel as though, because SEALs generally go straight from boot camp to the SEAL platoons, and look, they're hooligans or brigands, right? They're an offshoot of the Navy. Like, they don't have officer country. They don't have a lot of the sort of top-down military sort of structure that like young Marines or young infantry do. Do you feel as though they suffer from that?
100%. I hadn't really thought about this until actually after I wrote that thread. There was a reporter who reached out and like asked me what my opinion of it, because he was writing a long form thing about the culture of the SEAL teams. I'm not sure if it ever got published. But yeah, no, that's 100%. I think like that's a draw for guys that don't want to go do like the 82nd Airborne first. Like, but at the same time, I think we're poorer for it in a lot of ways. I think we don't. I think there's a maturity thing. There's a bit of a prima donna thing, because you came out of nowhere and now you're hot shit. Like, okay, cool, you're tough, and you can shoot straight, but like there's a lot more to the job than those flashy skills. We're really bad at logistics, and just understanding that like logistics win wars. like those sorts of things. Yeah, 100%. I think we are worse off for that. And if they started doing something where you had to, let's say you get your Trident, but then you have to go do your first deployment like attached to a Marine unit or something under the command of a Marine officer or something like that. Like I think there's potential there. I don't think it's ever going to happen, unfortunately, but I think that the teams would be better for it.
Yeah. And look, this isn't on a SEAL bashing system because they're pipe hitters, and in the circumstances they're trained for, they're very good at what they do.
Right. But it's when you try to use the scalpel to spread butter on bread, like you're gonna mess the bread up, right? Like that's just how it is. And I think that in some cases there's enough maturity like that exists there, where certain platoons are going to be absolute rock stars at all of these things. But I think a lot of the cultural problem does come from some level of immaturity and like an overgrowth of ego. And so yeah, no, I think that you're totally right. Like they're pipe hitters, but like if you want the pipe hitters to be able to do more things than like finding ways to instill some perspective and some maturity and some humility, like those are not bad ideas.
Well, Dave, I really appreciate you spending your Friday evening with us and sharing your story with us and merging the two Daves, talking about the entire person.
Three Daves.
Really, really good perspective. And we'll be back next Friday. We're going to have Vivek Jacob on the show. He served in 9 para with Indian Special Operations, one of their Special Operations units. So really excited to have him on the show.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. Dave, where can people find you?
I'm most active on Twitter at Aspiring Peasant. I also have a blog that I just started, and I haven't actually put anything up on it. It's aspiringpeasant.com, but there'll be stuff there. Mostly it's going to be parenting and homeschooling, gardening stuff, resiliency in terms of like the homesteading things, and then definitely some war stories too. But it won't be just like talking about how cool I am. It'll be mostly talking about things that we've learned and things that work for us.
Cool.
And is there anything that other than those that you want to plug right now? Okay.
No, I want to plug you guys. You guys are awesome. Thanks for having me on.
The Team House.
I guess we talked about it at the beginning, but like seriously, Jack, I'm going to send you a bottle. I'm going to send you each a bottle of the Posterity Cider Works cider, so you can like. I would love to.
I would love to.
I'm gonna send you guys each a bottle because like that if I gotta pimp something, it's that. Because
all right.
Those people are doing exactly what I wish like everybody in the world would do, which is like giving back to their community by making a thing and like making people realize that what they have right there is like already wealth. Yeah, like, that's the magic. That's awesome. The magic in life. And like so, yeah, I'm gonna send you guys each a bottle.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Fios, for enabling us to be live tonight.
Yeah.
Please like and subscribe our channel. Go to Dave's Twitter, Aspiring Peasant, and then check out our Patreon. Get ad-free
links down below
episodes and
yeah, man,
kick it.
We're out there. So yeah, thanks again. We're getting ready for our episode 200 bash too. That's coming up at the end of the month. It's been in the planning phase. So yeah, we'll see.
And Dave, you're just one more badass to add to the list of badasses we've had on this show, and we really appreciate it.
I'm the most hairless badass though. I saw everybody was commenting on that. It's like just low T, man. It's not my fault. I have like 7 chest hairs, and they all have names.
You were a vegetarian at the time. Nobody can blame you.
You have good hair.
I know, right?
You have good hair. You seem like a nice guy, Dave. But fuck Dave's hair.
Again, low T, right? High testosterone pushes it off of the head and onto the body.
Right here, baby. Ooh.
That's right. We know who the alpha is, Dave.
That's right. Even if nobody else in my life does.
It's all right. We got you, bro. We got you.
All right, guys. Thanks again, Dave, and we'll see everyone else next Friday.